My mother was the emperor's forbidden obsession, a bird in a gilded cage. Today, history repeats itself. As the palace fell, I raised a blade to my throat, seeking the same bloody freedom she found. But the sword was struck down. Alexander, the man who slaughtered my kin, knelt in the blood of my dynasty. He kissed my hand with terrifying devotion and whispered, "I came to claim what was always mine." He is my savior, my captor, and my greatest sin. My mother was breathtakingly beautiful. That was why she was held captive in the imperial city, becoming my father's personal obsession. I never imagined I would inherit my mother's looks, along with her fate. When the palace gates were breached, I dismissed my ladies-in-waiting and guards. I let down my hair, dressed in mourning clothes, and knelt in the center of the main hall. Once the dynasty fell, I would no longer be a princess. But I, Eleanor Fu, have always lived with dignity. I would never accept humiliation. I took up the long sword my mother had used to take her own life, ready to kill myself before the throne. But the blade was knocked from my hand. His face was spattered with blood as he strode forward in his armor. He knelt before me and said, "Princess, I am late." My mother was not originally my father's concubine. She was the wife of the Grand Marshal Arthur Gu. She and the general were childhood sweethearts and deeply in love. But my mother was far too beautiful. A single glance at a palace banquet was enough to captivate the emperor. Heedless of the scandal, he forcibly took his subordinate's wife and brought my mother into the palace. He made her a high-ranking concubine and showered her with affection. Later, he even deposed his first wife, the empress, and ignored the court's objections to make my mother his new empress. General Gu knelt at the gates of the Grand Hall for 5 days and nights. His forehead was split open, his blood staining the long steps, but he could not win back his wife. The Gu family had been loyal for generations, yet in the end, the general couldn't even protect his own wife. Overcome with grief, he fell ill and never recovered. According to the old palace servants, my mother only wished for death after entering the palace. My father himself bound her limbs and even fed her every meal with his own hands. It was only after she had me that she stopped trying to end her life. Logically, my mother should have resented me. I was the product of my father's assault on her. But my mother loved me dearly from the moment I was born. My father thought his devotion had finally won her over. With my birth, he slowly removed the guards watching her. The year I turned 7, General Gu died. On that same day, I lost my mother. After my mother passed away, my father spoiled me, making me the most honored princess in the Ying dynasty. Whatever I wanted, he would find a way to get it for me. "Ellie, you look so much like your mother." My father gently stroked my hair, his eyes growing distant. I knew he was lost in memories of my mother. "Has father's health improved?" I turned to ask the physician standing nearby. I was now 16. Ever since my mother's death, my father had grown sick with longing. His condition was worsening, and he often mistook me for my mother. "Your Highness, the Emperor, The physician broke out in a sweat, unsure how to respond. "Never mind. You may all leave," I said with a wave of my hand. I looked at my father, knowing his time was short. After everyone had left, I looked at my father's confused state and gave a scornful smile. "Father, when you die, I will be sure to bury your body properly in the imperial mausoleum. As for mother, I will bury her with General Arthur Gu. You will not disturb her any longer. If you truly loved her, you would have let her go." I left my father's chambers and saw a man standing not far away. He was a handsome young man, and his black robes only made him seem more striking. He was handsome beyond compare. I had never seen anyone like him before. The eunuch beside me answered, "Princess, that is Alexander Gu, the old general's nephew. He was stationed on the western frontier and has only just returned today." I silently repeated the name twice. Alexander Gu. As if sensing my gaze, Alexander Gu turned to look at me. He narrowed his eyes, and one corner of his mouth curved up slightly. He looked like a predator that had spotted its prey, his eyes fierce. Alexander Gu, the young general who went to the western frontier at the age of 10. The man who, after my father's death, led the charge to break through the city gates. With his spear pointed to the ground, he gave a single order and ascended the throne. "Princess, I am late." Alexander Gu's roguish laugh pulled me from my memories. His rough fingers brushed against my cheek, the friction a little painful. I had grown up in the imperial city, where everyone who met me was deferential and polite. I had never encountered someone so forward and disrespectful. "How dare you?" I felt a wave of disgust and slapped him across the face. He didn't dodge it. He took the full force of my blow. I had used all my strength, and a red mark quickly appeared on his cheek. Heh. He pressed his tongue against the inside of his bruised cheek, then looked at me with a charming yet untamed smile. "Since I've received a gift from the princess, it's only right to return the favor." His gaze dropped from my face to my waist, his eyes dark with obsession. "I've long heard that the princess is a devastating beauty. When I saw you that day, I realized the rumors were wrong." His hand reached for me. I tried to fight back, but he pinned both my hands above my head with one of his. His other arm wrapped around my waist. He buried his head in my neck, took a deep breath, and sighed. "The princess is simply divine. It makes me covetous." His expression was one of infatuation, but I only felt humiliated. "Alexander Gu, your family served this dynasty loyally for generations. You're a disgrace to them. Now that you've overthrown the throne, how can you face your ancestors?" I was the most honored princess of the Ying dynasty. When had I ever suffered such an insult? I would rather die than be humiliated like this. He looked at me, his gaze deepening. He suddenly raised a hand to cover my eyes and sighed. "Princess, don't look at me like that. I won't be able to control myself." He gently kissed the corner of my mouth and chuckled softly. "If I didn't ascend this throne, how else could I have you?" Alexander Gu placed me under house arrest in Jade Palace. This place once imprisoned my mother, and now it imprisons me. The new emperor's ascension went much more smoothly than I had imagined. The people were compliant, and the court officials offered their support. He secured his throne with astonishing speed. It seemed Alexander Gu had been plotting this rebellion for a long time. Such a smooth takeover wouldn't have been possible without years of planning. Despite it being his busiest time, he came to my palace every day. "Alexander Gu, you've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? Or was your family's loyalty just a facade, a cover for your plot to take the throne?" I watched him with cold eyes, discreetly moving the hand clenching a gold hairpin behind my back. He was carefully selecting a red jade hairpin from a tray of jewels presented by a maid. It was carved with a phoenix, exquisite and luxurious. "Princess." He walked toward me with the hairpin and slid it into my hair, but his other hand snaked behind my back and effortlessly snatched the gold hairpin from my grasp. "This gold one is beautiful, but it's too sharp. I'm afraid it might hurt you." He then turned to the servants, his face grim, radiating an authority that required no anger. "If the princess is harmed in any way, you will all answer to the Department of Punishments." I sneered inwardly. He wore his imperial authority as if born to it. After lying in wait on the western frontier for so many years, he must have been burning with impatience for this day. When he looked back at me, his expression softened again, as if he were a completely different person. He called to me gently, "Princess." I remained silent, my face a cold mask. He sighed, then spoke slowly. "The Gu family has produced generals for generations. Countless members have served in the army and died on the battlefield. When I was 12, I even watched as enemy soldiers pierced my father's heart." My heart wavered slightly. I knew he spoke the truth. Even though he had now rebelled and taken the throne, his ancestors had been utterly loyal to my royal family. "Princess, the Gu family has always been loyal to the Ying dynasty, and my loyalty to you is the same." He set aside his usual arrogance, his eyes filled with tenderness as he looked down at me. How utterly ridiculous. I suddenly pulled out the hairpin he had just placed in my hair and stabbed it into his chest. He hadn't been on guard against me. The pin sank halfway into his chest. If only it hadn't been so blunt, I might have killed him right then and there. I laughed coldly. "But it's true you usurped the throne. It's true you destroyed my family. Alexander Gu, I wish you were dead." Seeing me attack him, the guards drew their swords, ready to seize me. "Stand down," Alexander Gu commanded sharply. He gritted his teeth and pulled the hairpin out. The wound was a gruesome, bloody tear, still bleeding steadily. He looked at me with bloodshot eyes and a smile. "Princess, stay back. Don't let my blood stain your white clothes." I thought Alexander Gu would surely kill me, but after that day, he didn't show his face for several days. The flow of fine food and jewels to my palace, however, never stopped. He arrived just as I was smashing the 21st vase. The bright yellow dragon robe looked magnificent on him. His face was handsome and dashing, and he strode in without any sign of having been injured. "Princess, come with me." When I didn't move, he took my hand without another word and pulled me along. "Princess, if you don't want to walk, I'd be more than happy to carry you," he said with a bright, unrepentant smile. It was laughable. He was the emperor now, yet he still called me princess and spoke with the feigned deference of a subordinate. I followed him, and when I looked up, I saw we were at the imperial dungeons, where convicts and death row inmates were held. "Princess, watch your step," he said, holding my hand and walking carefully, as if afraid the prison filth would soil my silk shoes. When I saw who was locked inside, I glared at Alexander Gu with pure hatred. He smiled, satisfied. "Don't be angry, princess. They're just remnants of the old dynasty. How to deal with them, I'll listen to whatever you say." Remnants of the old dynasty, yes. The ones locked up inside were all members of my royal family. My brothers and sisters. "What if I told you to let them go?" I said, looking him in the eye. He chuckled softly and raised a hand to gently caress my earlobe. "Of course I'll do as you say, princess. But if I let them go, I'm not sure they'd survive for long out there." I thought about it and knew he was right. With the sudden change in power, it wouldn't be easy for members of the former royal family to survive. A cough caught my attention. I walked over and saw the man inside. Though his fine clothes were torn and he was disheveled, he still carried himself with a noble air. It was my eldest brother, the former crown prince. Among all my father's children, my brother, the prince, was the most talented. He was a man of great learning and grand strategy. If not for this upheaval, the throne should have been his. But now, his coronet had fallen, and he leaned against the wall, haggard and defeated. "I want to speak with him alone," I said to Alexander Gu. "Is the princess asking me for a favor?" Alexander Gu raised an eyebrow, his smile holding a hidden meaning. His gaze lingered on my lips. "If I grant your request, what will I get in return?" I clenched my fists in my sleeves and closed my eyes in resignation. He leaned in and laughed softly in my ear, his voice low and intimate. "Princess." He kissed my earlobe, then gently stroked my hair as his lips found mine. It began as a light brush of his lips, but his kiss soon grew more forceful. The movement of his lips and tongue felt as if he wanted to devour me, to absorb me into his very bones. My breathing became ragged, and my body grew weak. I pressed my hands against his chest, trying to escape. After a long moment, Alexander Gu finally pulled away from my lips. He held my limp body and laughed with pleasure, savoring the taste. He carefully straightened my clothes and hair, his touch so gentle it was as if I might shatter at any moment. Finally, his thumb brushed deliberately over my lips before he said, "Go on, I'll wait for you here." The jailer opened the cell door and retreated. Hearing the noise, my brother, the prince, immediately opened his eyes. They were bloodshot, with an exhaustion he couldn't hide, but they were still as sharp as a hawk's, filled with a deep hatred. When he saw it was me, he relaxed his guard, his expression softening. "Ellie? Brother?" I walked over, wanting to see if he was hurt. Perhaps sensing the worry in my eyes, my brother smiled at me. He was about to say something reassuring, but his words caught in his throat when he saw my swollen lips. His eyes darkened. The hatred he had just suppressed now overflowed. "He touched you?" Before my father met my mother, he already had many children. So while my half-siblings were wary of my father's affection for me and flattered me to my face, they always held some unspoken resentment toward me. My brother, the prince, was one of the few who was genuinely good to me. I shook my head and smiled. "Brother, I'm fine. We were both from the fallen royal family, yet while he languished here, I was still enjoying treasures of gold and jade in a splendid palace, attended by servants." Suddenly, my brother seemed to lose all his strength. He said in a low voice, "It's my fault. I was too weak to protect our country or to protect you." Just as I was about to speak, he gently patted the top of my head, just as he always used to. I heard him say, "Ellie, it's not your fault. It was the same for our dear aunt, your mother. Beauty is something you're born with, beyond your control." He looked at me with sincerity. Ellie, you must live. You must live well. A bitter sorrow welled up inside me, and tears finally fell. My brother reached out to wipe them away, but stopped when he saw his own hands were covered in blood and filth. He let his arm drop helplessly and forced a smile. Don't cry, Ellie. You are the most honored princess of the Ying dynasty. Don't cry. Finally, my brother said to me, go back. This place is filthy. Don't come here again. As I turned to step out of the cell, I heard him say, the magnolia hairpin in your hair suits you. Princess. Alexander Gu held out his hand as I came out. He stood backlit by the sun. Behind him were the green trees of summer, shining brightly. I walked toward him, step by step, and placed my hand in his as he watched with a look of triumphant delight. Hidden in my sleeve was the note my brother had given me. The magnolia hairpin in my hair had a secret compartment, just large enough for a hidden note. The hairpin was a gift from my brother, and his parting words had been a pointed reminder. I clenched my fist, then obediently took Alexander Gu's offered hand. He turned and gripped my hand tightly, leading me back to the palace. He still had many matters to attend to. He kissed my cheek and was about to leave. I watched him step over the threshold of the palace hall, and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But Alexander Gu suddenly stopped, turned back to look at me, and with a raised eyebrow, said with a smile, the princess is a little different today. I forced myself to remain calm and looked at him coldly. Don't you dare hurt them. He grinned, guessing that my compliance was a bid to protect my brother. He took my hand and squeezed it reassuringly. How could I refuse a request from the princess? I frowned, pulled my hand away, and turned coldly to order a maid. Close the gates. The maid glanced from me to him, then lowered her head and knelt on the ground in terror. I turned and glared at him. Alexander Gu wasn't annoyed. He gave a lazy smile and said in a clear voice, Don't be angry, princess. I'll take my leave now. After he left, I took out the slip of paper and unfolded it. The Feather Guard, Wild Mountain. At the very least, I had to save the crown prince, my brother. I burned the paper, the flickering flames reflecting in my eyes. That evening, Alexander Gu came to see me, carrying a jug of wine. Jade Dew of Qianghua. I've long heard this is your favorite wine, princess. He had changed into a black, dragon-patterned robe inlaid with gold thread, radiating an air of opulence. Princess, have a drink with me. He poured a cup and handed it to me, his tone sincere and earnest. I knocked the cup from his hand. I was his prisoner in this palace. How could I possibly drink with him? Besides, I suspected he had ulterior motives. Alexander Gu smiled and poured another cup. As he walked toward me, he looked just like one of those dashing rogues from a storybook. Since you are unwilling to drink it, princess, I will drink it for you. He tilted his head back and drained the cup, but then he seized my chin with one hand, locked my wrist with the other, and forced the wine from his mouth into mine. Though I had been on guard, I couldn't push him away. I swallowed awkwardly, the picture of utter humiliation. I clenched my fists, trembling with rage. He paid me lip service, professing to respect and honor me, but what had he done that wasn't meant to shame and debase me? Get out! After I caught my breath, I shoved him away with all my might, glaring at him. Alexander Gu, if you truly want to torture me, why resort to such methods? I looked at him mockingly. You might as well kill me, the princess of a fallen dynasty, and secure your reputation as a petty villain. Princess, he said softly, a hint of pity in his voice, how could I ever bear to let you die? He was the one who claimed to respect and love me, yet he was also the one who imprisoned and humiliated me. Alexander Gu's words rang with a cruel irony. Alexander Gu chuckled and stepped forward. Before I could move, he snatched the porcelain shard hidden in my sleeve. I had hidden a piece when I shattered the wine cup, but I never imagined he had seen everything. I can't even bear to harm a single hair on your head, princess. You shouldn't harm your own precious body either, Alexander Gu said, his lips curving into a slight smile as he met my eyes. Besides, the former crown prince is still in prison. If you want to save him, you should take better care of yourself. And if I wanted to establish my authority, wouldn't killing the former crown prince be more effective? My heart lurched. You dare, I snapped. He narrowed his eyes, a wild smile spreading across his face. What wouldn't I dare? But rest assured, princess, I won't do that. Not for now. As long as you stay by my side, I will grant you anything you desire. He was threatening me. I was filled with a fury I couldn't unleash, and could only glare at him hatefully. But Alexander Gu moved like lightning, pulling me down onto the bed and into his embrace. His thumb gently rubbed my wrist as he said, "Don't worry, princess. I won't touch you. Sleep." Alexander Gu, I struggled with all my might, but it was useless. If you still have energy to spare, princess, I could accompany you in other activities. I instantly froze, not daring to move, but I didn't close my eyes all night. Only when dawn broke did exhaustion finally overcome me, and I fell into a deep sleep. I woke up at noon. Maids stood waiting with clothes and pearl hairpins, and the food on the table was still steaming. His Majesty has ordered that the meal be served as soon as your ladyship awakens. Who told you to call me your ladyship? Seeing my dark expression, all the maids and guards in the palace dropped to their knees. My lady, please calm your anger. My frustration only grew. I had no appetite at all. Then I heard a commotion outside. I could vaguely make out a guard's voice saying, "By His Majesty's order," and "Please halt, Empress Dowager." The Empress Dowager? That would be the wife of the late General Gu's brother. I ordered a maid to invite the Empress Dowager in. A plan was already forming in my mind. "Princess, it has been some time since we last met." She sat down, supported by an older attendant. This mother and son were truly ridiculous. On one hand, they destroyed my kingdom and imprisoned my family. On the other, they acted so familiar and respectful, calling me princess. "You are the Empress Dowager now. There's no need for such an act." I snorted, picking up a jug of wine and pouring a cup for myself. My wrist was still red and swollen. As I poured the wine, my sleeve slipped back, and she saw it. She sighed and said slowly, "For more than 10 generations, the Gu family has been devoted to protecting the country. The day Alex returned from the western frontier and spoke such outrageous words, the entire clan thought he was audacious, reckless, and disloyal. They gave him 50 strokes of the cane. He took it without a sound and then knelt in the ancestral hall for 3 days. When I went to persuade him, his back was a mangled mess of flesh and blood. It broke my heart to see it, and I told him to give up on this idea. But he was insistent. My son? I know him better than anyone. He followed his father onto the battlefield at the age of 10 to defend our home. When would he ever have harbored such ambitions?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with sincerity. "Princess, he truly loves you." "Loves me?" I laughed coldly, my expression anything but pleasant. "He loves me, so he destroyed my kingdom? I certainly can't bear that kind of love. It's merely the changing of dynasties. The Ying dynasty's fate was sealed. In Alex's hands, the new dynasty will only be better," she said lightly. "To my mind, the deeds of the late emperor were not those of a good ruler. Since you know my father's actions were less than honorable, how is what Alexander Gu is doing now, imprisoning me in this palace, any different from him?" I stood up and walked over to her, looking down into her eyes. "We are both women. We know that what we desire cannot be obtained by force. Now that I have been so utterly humiliated, what makes you think you can convince me? Besides, is there truly no dissent in the court? Your son has just ascended the throne. His foundation is unstable. Aren't you afraid the officials will turn against him?" She met my gaze for a long moment. Finally, she dismissed the palace attendants and said what I wanted to hear. "Princess, how do you want me to help you?" In the days that followed, officials submitted memorials suggesting the harem be filled. An auspicious time had been set, and the concubine conferring ceremony would be held soon. At that time, Alexander Gu would be too busy to pay attention to me. I just needed to obtain a token with some help, and I could leave the palace. As for the rest, I had my own plans. After court, Alexander Gu came straight to my palace. He took my hand and kissed the red mark on my wrist. "I heard my mother came to see you, princess." "What, you think I would believe her when she said you truly love me?" I pulled my hand away, refusing to look at him. Afraid he might investigate what we'd talked about, I threw a barb at him to distract him. He didn't seem suspicious. Knowing I was still angry, he didn't press me but simply smiled and said, "My mother was mistaken. What I feel for you, princess, is much more than just love." For the next few days I patiently tolerated him. Wary after that night, he, for his part, did nothing too out of line. Soon, the day of the concubine conferring ceremony arrived. I swapped clothes with a maid. She gave me the token the Empress Dowager had prepared and whispered, "Later, princess, you will go with the other servants. Once you're out of Jade Palace, someone will be there to meet you and help you leave the palace." With the Empress Dowager's help, everything went smoothly. But a faint sense of unease lingered in my heart. When I was just 2 steps from the palace gate, I finally allowed myself to breathe a sigh of relief. But then a voice came from behind, plunging me into an icy abyss. "Princess, where are you going?" In an instant, we were surrounded by guards. The palace gate slammed shut. I stiffly turned my head to look at him. I could see it clearly. Though his eyes were smiling, the curve of his lips was chillingly cold. He was angry, I thought. He would never let me go this time. Never. "Princess, come here." Alexander Gu beckoned to me. The surrounding guards had me completely cornered. He had cut off all my paths, leaving only one, the one that led to him. He was watching me, waiting for me to submit, to walk step by step into the cage he had so carefully prepared for me. I turned to look at the closed palace gate, only 2 steps away. Just 2 steps. When I turned back, he was already behind me. He swept me up into his arms, locking me in his embrace. His face was terrifyingly grim. "All guards and maids on duty at Jade Palace today are to be caned." With that, he strode away, still carrying me. When we reached Jade Palace, the guards and maids had already been replaced. As I looked up, I saw that red lanterns now hung from the eaves, and the character for "Double Happiness" was pasted on the windows. Alexander Gu loosened his grip and set me down on the bed. Although his movements were much gentler, the things on the bed pricked me painfully. I grabbed a handful. I saw peanuts, longans, red dates. I threw them forcefully in his face, my eyes filled with scorn and rage. "Alexander Gu, you have some nerve." He ignored me and poured 2 cups of wine into goblets carved with a dragon and a phoenix. "You are a princess of noble birth. In all the world there is no one more worthy of you than I." He looked at me with an unreadable expression, a humorless smile on his lips. "Will you drink this cup yourself, princess, or shall I feed it to you?" I couldn't help but remember the last time. Gritting my teeth in hatred, I took the cup and drank with him, then smashed it on the ground. I was on high alert, my eyes fixed on him. But I saw Alexander Gu turn and sit down, merely pouring himself another cup of wine. "The first time I saw you, princess, I was simply stunned that such a beautiful girl could exist in this world. Your every smile and every frown captured my heart." He twirled the cup with his long fingers and continued with a smile. "After that, I started to pay attention to your every move. The more I learned, the more I fell for you." I frowned. So Alexander Gu had known me for a long time. But why did I have no memory of him? Alexander Gu held the wine cup with just 2 fingers. The candlelight cast a glow on his profile, making his smile breathtakingly beautiful. He looked at me and narrowed his eyes, a gentle and affectionate look on his face as if recalling a memory. "My feelings for you, princess, began with your beauty. But later, every day I spent at the western frontier, I deeply missed all your moods. Your joy, your anger, your sulks, your pouts. On the day of your coming-of-age ceremony, I thought to myself, I must become the ruler of this Ying dynasty. Then, whatever you want, princess, I will offer it to you with both hands. Though I stand above 10,000 people, I am willing to forever be beneath you." He looked deeply affectionate, but I was only filled with disgust. "Alexander Gu, if you truly loved me, you wouldn't treat me like this. You use the pretense of deep love to inflict pain on me. Your love is utterly laughable." He just smiled, not saying a word in response. He tipped my chin up with a hooked finger. "You are beautiful in plain clothes, princess, but I dearly miss the sight of you in magnificent red. Someone, take the princess to change." I tried to struggle, but my limbs were growing weak and I couldn't muster any strength. I looked at the shattered cup on the floor and knew for certain that the wine had been drugged. Seeing the fury in my eyes, Alexander Gu let out a low, husky laugh, his expression smug and self-satisfied. I asked the imperial physician, "This drug will not harm your body. I was just thinking of last time and wanted you to suffer a little less." The maids helped me to a side hall and changed me into the clothes they had prepared. It was a crimson palace gown of cloud-patterned brocade embroidered with a golden phoenix. The skirt was adorned with a sprawling pattern of phoenix flowers. It was excessively lavish, clearly an empress's wedding dress. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like a beautiful caged canary. I suddenly grabbed a candlestick from the table and pointed its sharp tip at my own neck. "My lady, you mustn't," a maid shrieked. She fell to her knees, trying to grab the candlestick, crying and begging me. "My parents are still alive, and I am their only daughter. If you harm yourself, my lady, I will be put to death. I beg you, spare my life." In my moment of hesitation, Alexander Gu rushed in at the sound of the commotion. "From now on, princess, if you harm yourself by even a hair, I will repay it 100-fold on those in the dungeons." Alexander Gu swept aside the curtain and entered. He had also changed into his wedding attire. He held out his hand to me. "Princess, put the candlestick down." So that was it. He hadn't killed my brother and sister because he wanted to use them to control me, to force me into submission. My hand dropped limply, and the candlestick fell to the floor with a crisp clang. Only then did he smile. He wrapped his arms around me with the joy of someone who has recovered something precious. He looked down at me, his eyes full of awe. "You have a beauty that could topple nations, princess. It makes my heart ache." He picked me up and walked toward the bed. I knew that any further struggle was meaningless. But I couldn't stop myself from saying one more thing. "Alexander Gu, I hate you, and I will never change my mind." He lowered his head to kiss me. "My heart is the same when it comes to you, princess. That will never change." Alexander Gu gently placed me on the bed, his elbow propped beside me. "I've had someone clear away the things on the bed. They may be auspicious, but I was afraid they would hurt you." His gaze never left me, gentle and lingering. To me, it was as if he were admiring a work of art he had created himself. I felt disgusted and closed my eyes, refusing to look at him. Alexander Gu whispered to me, "Red bed, wedding candles, matching wedding clothes, and a shared cup of wine. You and I, princess, are now husband and wife." My eyes were still closed, but I said, "Alexander Gu, whatever you do, I will hate you for it, endlessly. I will never fall in love with you." He began to untie my sash, and at my words, he just chuckled unconcerned. "It doesn't matter. We have a long life ahead of us. As long as you stay by my side, that's enough." I clenched my hands, trying my best to numb myself. A wave of heat spread from my core through my limbs. I was still fighting it, but I knew the drug in the wine was now taking full effect. Alexander Gu looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. He leaned down to kiss me. "Princess," he whispered. Of course, I would not answer him. As my breathing grew ragged, my thoughts began to scatter. How I wished I had died on the day of the coup. I was completely drained of strength. All my struggles were in vain. I only felt his rough fingers scraping painfully against my skin. "Princess," Alexander Gu whispered, his head bowed. "I have, in the end, defiled you." As he said this, I tried to kick him, but his hand found a certain spot on my waist and pressed lightly. In that instant, I lost all my defenses and was utterly defeated. I have a sensitive spot on my waist that I've had since birth. If a maid so much as brushed against it while changing my clothes, my whole body would go limp. But I had always hidden it well. Only my 2 former personal maids knew of it, and I feared they were no longer in this world. I was overcome with shame and fury, but there was nothing I could do. Tears began to fall. "Princess," he chuckled softly. The smile in his eyes felt unbearably cruel. I felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces in that moment. My self-respect, my pride, it was all gone. Alexander Gu bent down and kissed the tears from the corner of my eye, whispering softly, "Don't cry, princess. It won't hurt for long." I lifted my head and bit down hard on his shoulder. I could taste the metallic tang of blood. He didn't stop me, nor did his brow even twitch. As my consciousness faded, my hatred did not diminish in the slightest. My tears soaked a patch of the pillow. At some point, as I was about to sink into sleep, I still heard Alexander Gu's smiling whisper in my ear, "Princess? I must admit, I've acquired a taste for this." When I awoke the next day, maids were already waiting by the bed. Seeing me awake, one of them hurried out. A moment later, Alexander Gu came in. "Your Majesty, the water is ready." He nodded, wrapped me in an outer robe, and carried me to the bathing pool. I had no energy left to curse him, so I just glared up at him. "I lost control last night. Don't be angry, princess. He lowered his head and kissed my eyelids before gently placing me in the pool. The water was slightly hot and it stung my skin. I closed my eyes and endured it. I heard the sound of clothes falling to the floor. Opening my eyes, I saw Alexander Gu, his chest bare. The scab over his heart had not yet fallen off, and on his shoulder was the clear imprint of a bite mark. From me, last night. He came up behind me, and a shower of delicate kisses fell onto my back. I couldn't bear it any longer. I spun around and raised my hand, but he caught my wrist and pinned it against the rim of the pool. It was half pain, half hatred. Tears splashed into the water, one by one. When I was young, I heard that my aunt was so beautiful that the emperor forcibly took her into the palace, where she received all his favor, he sighed. It wasn't until I saw you, princess, that I understood what it feels like to want someone so badly you would do anything to have them. I suppressed my rage. When I spoke, my voice was hoarse. Alexander Gu, do you know why my father died? He was ill, but not fatally. He watched me quietly, not speaking, but his eyes were dark and dangerous. In a raspy voice, I whispered, my third brother had always coveted the throne. He secretly raised an army, planning to seize power. But as long as my father was alive, the crown prince, my brother, had the full support of the people. Only if our father died would he have a sliver of a chance. I gasped for breath, then continued. So 3 years ago, he began to secretly poison our father. The doses were tiny, infinitesimal, so they were never detected. But I knew. A small smile touched my lips. I even helped him by increasing the dosage of the poison. My father had treated me very well, but only because I was my mother's daughter, and even more so because I looked so much like her. But my mother had spent her entire life trapped in this cage, never once seeing the person she loved and missed again. The palace had been my mother's prison for a lifetime. It was my father who had ruined her. I hate what my father did, and I hate you even more. So, Alexander Gu, I will kill you. He smiled and kissed my collarbone. It doesn't matter. If I die by your hand, princess, I will do so willingly. After that, Alexander Gu spent every night in my palace. Rare treasures were sent over in a constant stream. His other concubines in the harem finally couldn't stand it anymore and came to confront me. The guards, hesitant to block them due to their rank, were pushed aside as they forced their way in. Insolence! Kneel and pay your respects to Our Lady. A maid gestured at me imperiously. The woman beside her stood with her back straight, looking up at me. Her aqua-colored palace gown was of a rank befitting a high consort. Huh. I lazily lifted my eyes, recognizing her as the daughter of some minister from the old court. I, Eleanor Fu, have only ever been bowed to. No one has ever made me kneel. Wouldn't you agree, Laura Fang? I was now a prisoner in Jade Palace, unable to take a single step outside. If I wanted to get out, I needed an opportunity. I stopped my attendants who were about to ask her to leave and looked at Laura Fang. She seemed surprised that I remembered her. Or perhaps she was reminded of how she used to fawn over me. Her expression changed instantly, and she blustered, trying to save face. I am a high consort now. You naturally should kneel to me. You want me to kneel to you? I sneered. I don't even deign to acknowledge Alexander Gu. A mere consort, you are not worthy. Laura Fang was shocked and furious. How dare you speak His Majesty's name directly? She was enraged, pointing at me. The old dynasty has fallen. You are no longer a princess. I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. As she stared in disbelief, I said, even fallen as I am, you are still beneath me. Get out! The guards quickly dragged her out. I took a silk handkerchief and slowly wiped my hand, my gaze following her. Laura Fang, if you value your life, don't ever provoke me again. After court, Alexander Gu came to my palace. He was still in his bright yellow dragon robe. He rubbed my wrist and said, why did you have to do it yourself, princess? You might have hurt yourself. I have already punished her severely. She won't bother you again. My voice was cold. If you hadn't imprisoned me in this palace, who would dare to come and humiliate me? He tried to coax a smile out of me. Don't be angry, princess. From now on, you may go anywhere you wish in the palace. Alexander Gu, should I be thanking you for your benevolence? I asked, my eyes filled with sarcasm. You grew up in the palace, princess. Where could you not go? How is what I'm saying a gift? He took a bracelet from his sleeve and slipped it onto my wrist. It was of exquisite quality and likely priceless. He frowned as he looked at me. I am just afraid you will leave me. Alexander Gu took my hand and looked out the window. The trees are green and the cicadas are singing. You should walk around more and relax. I lowered my head and said no more. At least I could go out now. On the third day, as I was walking through the imperial garden, a maid suddenly knelt before me, crying and begging. My lady, you are merciful. I beg you to save me, my lady. Princess, please save me. The guards quickly rushed forward, dragged her away, then knelt to apologize. We have failed in our duties, allowing a criminal from the Department of Punishments to disturb you, my lady. I watched the maid being dragged away, thinking about how she had suddenly switched from my lady to princess. Recalling her face, she seemed somewhat familiar. Which palace did that maid serve in before? I asked the guards. But the guards looked troubled, glancing at each other hesitantly. I raised my voice slightly and scoffed. Even if you don't tell me now, I can find out later. Replying to your ladyship, that maid originally worked in the Splendor Palace. The Splendor Palace. The former residence of the Crown Prince's birth mother, concubine Yu. My mind raced. I returned to my palace. That evening, Alexander Gu had a servant bring a bowl of medicine to my chambers. As it drew near, I caught the strong scent of ginger, mingled with other herbs. Your monthly cycle is about to begin. I had the imperial physician prepare this to ease the pain in your abdomen. He took the bowl, scooped up a spoonful, blew on it gently, and held it to my lips. Don't worry, princess, he said with a faint smile. It isn't bitter. I know you dislike the taste, so I had the physician add honey. Alexander Gu, how do you know these things? I stared at him, my eyes filled with suspicion. When it comes to you, princess, one might say I have been a devoted student, he said with a smile, lifting another spoonful to my lips. I frowned, took the bowl from him, and drank it all in one go. When Alexander Gu saw the empty bowl, he let out a hearty laugh. I was simply tired of sparring with him, and even more afraid of what new trick he might pull. I heard from the servants that you've taken a liking to pomegranates recently. I've already had a few trees transplanted for you, and cherries, which you've always loved. They should bear fruit by next year. As Alexander Gu spoke, he lifted me into his arms and walked toward the bed. Sensing me tense up, he said in a gentle voice, Though I desire you, princess, I am not so heedless as to ignore your body's needs. I will not touch you for the next few days. You may rest easy. I breathed a sigh of relief at his words, but my palms were still slick with a thin layer of sweat. Fearing he would notice, I brought up the day's events. I saw a maid in the imperial garden today, one who used to serve concubine Yu. Oh? His tone held no surprise. Of course. The spies in this palace reported my every move to him. I swallowed my disgust and continued. Although my brother, the crown prince, was good to me, his mother never liked me, on account of my own. She made things difficult for me at every turn. Tomorrow, I think I'd like to see what has become of her. He'd let out a cold snort the moment I mentioned my brother. It seemed my calling him crown prince had displeased him. Does the princess still wish to see this crown prince? Although Alexander Gu's tone was flat, I could still sense a flicker of anger beneath the surface. No, I replied, and, knowing he might be suspicious, added, my brother would not want anyone to see him like this. How considerate. He squeezed my hand. I will accompany you tomorrow, princess. Alexander Gu, are you planning to watch over me yourself? Seeing my anger flare, he sighed and conceded. Very well. I will simply send a few more guards to protect you. Don't be angry, princess. I turned my head away coldly, unwilling to look at him. Knowing I was upset, Alexander Gu quickly changed the subject. Would you like to be my empress, princess? Don't say such things to disgust me, Alexander Gu, I snapped, my voice like ice. He knew I was unwilling, so he didn't bring it up again. He simply held me and said, no matter what, you are the only one in my heart. I closed my eyes, hiding the deep hatred and disgust that I knew they held. He kissed my neck. Thinking I was sleepy, he whispered gently, Sleep now, princess. The next day, I arrived at the prison. I dismissed the guards and wardens and walked inside alone. You're here. The once glamorous concubine Yu, now clad in dirty robes with her hair disheveled, tried to fix an undone bun as she sat up to face me. When she saw that my own clothes and appearance were as impeccable as ever, she couldn't help but sneer. I had no intention of wasting words with her. I just said, "You sent a maid to find me. What do you want?" She dodged the question. "I hear the princess is greatly favored by the new emperor. Have you forgotten who you are? The late emperor's bones are not yet cold, and still you can stomach the fine delicacies of this palace. If you summoned me just to say this, then I don't have time to entertain you." My face hardened, and I turned to leave. Seeing me about to go, she called out to stop me. "My son has treated you wonderfully since you were children." As she said this, her expression turned strange for a moment. Seeing me look at her, she immediately composed herself. "You must get him out." Although I disliked her commanding tone, this was about my brother, the crown prince, so I listened patiently. "I know he left himself a way out. I don't know what it is, but now that he's imprisoned here, you are the only one who can help him." She looked at me and said, "The Prime Minister's son, Sebastian Shen, will return in a few days. Look, he grew up with my son, and you can trust him. If you ask, he will surely help you." I calculated the time in my head. I couldn't stay too long, or Alexander Gu would grow suspicious, making my next move all the more difficult. She knew time was short as well. She stared at me, her words coming in a rush. "My son, Julian Fu, has always been devoted to you. If you betray him, I will haunt you to the end of your days. If ghosts truly existed, my father, the emperor, wouldn't have needed my third brother's poison to finally die." When I returned to my palace, I found several pomegranates laid out on the table. My heart leaped, but then a maid spoke. "His Majesty knows you've taken a liking to these recently, so he sent men all the way to Lianzhou to pick them for you. His Majesty is so good to you, Your Highness." I instantly relaxed, ignoring the maid's final remark. Alexander Gu, good to me? Laughable. My mind dwelt on concubine Yu's words. The way out she mentioned for the crown prince must be the plumed guard he had told me about. Wild Mountain. I pondered for a moment. There was no way for me to leave the palace now. The only person who could go there and investigate was Sebastian. Sebastian was my brother's study companion, so we practically grew up together. My father had even once considered him for my royal consort, but his health declined, and he no longer had the energy to concern himself with my marriage. After ascending the throne, Alexander Gu had banished him to Lingdong, yet concubine Yu said he would be back in a few days. A few days later, a eunuch came to summon me, saying Alexander Gu wanted me in the imperial study. I was about to refuse, but the eunuch said, "His Majesty has commanded that if you refuse, the criminals scheduled for the autumn execution may include those you wish to protect." I shot him a sideways glance and rose to my feet. The eunuch raised a sleeve to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. "This way, if you please." Just as I arrived, Alexander Gu put down his brush. A stack of memorials was piled on his desk. Seeing me, he looked up, smiled, and held out a hand. "Come, princess." After pulling me into his arms, he commanded, "Without my order, no one is to enter." The eunuch bowed his head in assent, then retreated with a serving girl, closing the doors behind them. "I know you are skilled in all the fine arts, the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, but you are especially gifted at painting. Have a look, princess. Is my work at all presentable?" He kneaded my fingers, clearly enjoying himself. I followed his gaze to the painting on his desk. Looking closer, I saw the subject, a woman with her clothes half undone, a blush on her cheeks, and misty, desire-filled eyes. A single tear at the corner added a coquettish charm. I couldn't bear to look. I was overcome with shame. The woman in the painting was, unmistakably, me. Alexander Gu, however, looked quite pleased with himself. "My skills are poor," he said with a smile. "I haven't captured even a fraction of your exquisite beauty." He lifted me and set me on the desk, right on top of the painting. Seeing my fury, he simply kissed my lips, his voice low. "I was considerate of your discomfort these past few days, but your monthly bleeding has passed." Just as I was about to scold him, his thumb gently caressed my lips. "Don't make a sound, princess," he whispered. The words had barely left his mouth when a eunuch's high-pitched voice called out, "Your Majesty, Lord Sebastian requests an audience." Alexander Gu met my stunned and suspicious gaze, then called out in a clear voice, "There is no need to enter. Report from outside the door." I heard Sebastian's voice, crisp and clear. As you command, your majesty. Alexander Gu lifted my silk skirt and whispered in my ear, Princess, would you like him to come in? Alexander Gu? I clutched my sleeves, my voice low. Not here. What's wrong? His hand traveled up beneath my skirt, a chill flashing in his eyes. Does doing this with me, with him only a door away, make you shy? He pressed his thumb into the small of my back, his smile sinister. Or is it that you harbor secret feelings for him and don't want me to be with you while he is so near? My strength gave out. My body trembled and my eyes began to sting. Why must you humiliate me like this? The tears fell, but I didn't dare make a sound. I didn't want Sebastian to know the true extent of my degradation, even if he already knew I was a prisoner in Alexander Gu's palace. I am Eleanor Fu. I don't care what strangers think, but I will not let those I care about know this shame. Princess, I just want you to belong completely to me, so that no one can ever take you away. He looked down at me, his gaze a disturbing mix of reverence and possession. I know you dislike this, but I cannot bear the thought of you thinking of another man. Princess, I have never wanted to shame you. In this world, there is no one who respects you more than I do. If your majesty is occupied, I can return on another day. I heard Sebastian's voice from beyond the study doors. He must have heard our voices, but couldn't make out who was speaking. He didn't know I was in there with him. No need, Alexander Gu said, his fingers lingering at my waist. His fingertips traced a soft line, and, just as he expected, a shudder ran through me. Is the matter in Lingdong settled? His fingers never stopped moving, yet he still had the presence of mind to conduct his affairs. The insect plague has been eradicated. I came to the palace today to report this to your majesty. As I listened to Sebastian, my focus was inevitably drawn to his voice. Pay attention, princess, or I might get jealous. Alexander Gu whispered in my ear, his tone a warning. When I glared at him, Alexander Gu simply smiled, removed his outer robe, and placed it beneath me. The gesture was both courtly and profane. He said to Sebastian, his fingertips finding the sash of my dress and pulling it loose with a gentle tug. Then, brooking no argument, he declared in a low voice, Princess, look at me. You are mine. After that, I couldn't hear Sebastian's words. Whenever he sensed my attention wavering, Alexander Gu would apply a little more force, and I would lose all ability to think. The painting was already crumpled beyond recognition. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw an open memorial on the pile of documents. It mentioned the name Cecilia Shen. Cecilia Shen was the Prime Minister's daughter and Sebastian's elder sister. Before I had time to think, Alexander Gu kissed away the tears at the corner of my eye and chuckled. Don't cry anymore, princess. Save some tears. We still have the night ahead. I was incandescent with rage. My eyes red, I slapped him across the face. The sound was sharp. Outside the door, Sebastian suddenly fell silent. The eunuch, guards, and maids all dropped to their knees. But then I heard Alexander Gu's laughter, wanton and unrestrained. It is nothing. All of you withdraw. I have more important business to attend to. Sebastian paused for a moment before saying, Then this subject will take his leave. As I let out a low sob, I couldn't help but think that he must know. He must know it was me. That night, Alexander Gu did indeed come to my palace. The moment I saw him, I grabbed the nearest object and threw it at him. He didn't dodge. It struck his forehead, drawing blood that trickled down past the corner of his eye, like a teardrop of blood. If I had known you wouldn't dodge, I would have thrown a knife. But I didn't have a knife. If I did, I would have killed him in his sleep long ago. He took the silk handkerchief, offered by a trembling maid. A servant tried to step forward to treat his wound, but he just waved them away. He wiped the blood from his face haphazardly, then seized my chin and bent down to kiss me, his mouth moving over mine, fierce and domineering. At the end, he licked my lips with a startling gentleness and said with a smile, I know I angered you today, princess. It's only right that you be allowed to vent. Despite his words, he showed me no mercy in bed. The court ministers are all suggesting that I take the Prime Minister's eldest daughter, Cecilia Shen, as my empress. What do you think, princess? So, the memorial I saw today was about selecting an empress. I gave him a cold smile. Whoever marries you, I will only feel pity for her. Alexander Gu bent his head and sucked a bruise onto the side of my neck, smiling against my skin. Naturally, You are the only one in my heart. That wasn't what I meant, but I didn't want to argue with him. Given his obsession, more words were useless. I know you were good friends with her. If she becomes empress, you two can at least keep each other company. He wasn't wrong. It was precisely because Cecilia and I were once close that I found myself saying, Alexander Gu, if you don't care for her, why marry her and ruin her life? He gently wiped the sweat from my brow. Only by making her empress can I protect you from further gossip. He looked at me, his eyes full of a raw, desperate emotion, and called my name softly. Princess? I detested him like this, but he forced my eyes open and made me look at him. After he was sated, he held me, rubbing my lower back in slow circles. The heat from his palm seeped into my skin, easing the ache. Then he spoke. My uncle was very good to me when he was alive. He had no sons of his own and treated me as one. My uncle was a good man, but he lost the woman he loved. The once dashing general ended up languishing in his sickbed. And so I grew to hate the late emperor as well. For once, I didn't talk back, listening as he spoke of the man my mother had loved. But now I am also grateful. I'm grateful the late emperor stole my aunt away. My grandfather had few heirs, with my uncle being his only son. Unwilling to see the main branch of the family decline, he chose my father from the clan and had him adopted and raised by my uncle. If not for that, I might never have beheld your face, princess, let alone hold you in my arms as I do now. Princess. Alexander Gu, did you know that my father once intended for me to marry Sebastian? I deliberately cut him off, my voice cold. As expected, his expression chilled, and he held me tighter. But the one sharing a bed with you now is me. In all the world, no one else can be with you like this. His hand moved with clear intent. Sensing his arousal, I said, we grew up together. I don't want to lead him on. Let me meet with him one last time, to tell him to find someone else and forget me. Alexander Gu turned my face toward him and looked deep into my eyes, as if trying to discern the truth in my words. I gave a cold laugh and kicked at him, glaring. Do you think I'm you, willing to ruin someone's life for my own selfish desires? Only then did he seem to half believe me. He lowered his head to find my lips. I will grant your request, princess, he said. It is for the best. I don't want anyone else thinking of you, not even in their fantasies. The next morning, I calmly took a bracelet from my jewelry box and gave it to a maid. Send this to Laura Fang. Tell her that my current freedom is thanks in no small part to her, so this is her reward. Knowing her personality, she would surely be enraged and make a move against me. Go, I said faintly. If Alexander Gu assigns any blame, I will take it upon myself. I'll keep you safe. I will carry out your orders, Your Highness. That afternoon, word came that Lord Sebastian was waiting for me in a side hall. I deliberately chose a high-collared dress to cover the marks on my neck. When I saw Sebastian, it felt as though a lifetime had passed.